Good to see you. Sorry, we had a week off. I hope you had meaningful Thursday nights last night. We've heard that some people watched some good TV.
Or trashy.
But I'm glad to be here with you all this evening. Tonight we're going to look at a poem that animates nature. It's a poem that shifts our perspectives away from our usual androcentric, people-centered way of looking at things and towards a different kind of view of the world, towards a different understanding and a different way of being in the world. And this is, I would argue, a core function of poetry. It takes the world that we live in, that we exist within at every moment, all day, every day, and it does something, I sort of think of it as a photo negative. It creates a photo negative where those things that were in the shadows become highlighted, and the things that were highlighted are moved to the shadows. And you'll see this with lots of poetry, with certainly lots of my favorite poetry, and with a good deal of Jewish poetry, including, and by Jewish poetry, I'm thinking expansively, Jewish poetry that we think of as poetry, and Jewish poetry that we think of as holy text. We have a lot of poetic holy text that animates nature. And so the poem that we're going to look at today, along with some of this other text, which I will argue is poetry, is a poem by Natan Alterman, who was born in Warsaw in 1910. And at an early age, he moved to Tel Aviv, where he studied agronomy. He studied agriculture and the land, and it informs a lot of how he understands the world and writes about the world. Even though he did study agriculture, though, he transitioned to journalism and to poetry at some point in his career. And he was a very influential figure in early Israeli statehood, even a political figure. I will say there's one poem we're not going to look at today, but a poem that he wrote responding to the Holocaust, at the time of the Holocaust, where he took the prayer, Asher Bacharbanu. We say, when we go up to the Torah, we say, blessed is God who chose us from among all the peoples, Asher Bacharbanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torah. And he writes this satirical poem about, which is, it's pretty heartbreaking how we've been chosen for this. We've been chosen, Asher Bacharbanu, God who chose us for this pain in this moment, and what it means to be the chosen people. And sometimes that, and I think a lot of us are feeling it now. We can talk about what chosenness means too, and that's not the poem we're going to talk about today. But what does it mean to be a chosen people when that so often means our pain and persecution? And so he wrote this incredible poem. I'm going to share the screen with you now. One moment. What?
It was up there before.
It was up there before. Let's go back. Oh, someone signed in to this. Sorry. 1 minute. I'm going to stop the share and put this back up. One moment. Okay, I don't know why it switched over to. Let's try this again. Okay. All right.
Nothing.
I know, I'm about to share it. Okay, here we go. Okay. So I've named the entire teaching an animated world, and we're really gonna look at it around this poem, which is called Yareach, the moon. I'd like to do what we've been doing throughout the rest of our sessions and just read through the poem first. And then we're going to go back and go through it. Would anyone like to read? Okay, go ahead.
Even an old landscape has a moment of birth. The birdless heavens are impregnable and strange. Moonlit under your window lies your city bathed in cricket weeping. But when you see that, the path still looks at the wanderer, and the moon rests on a spear of cypress, you ask in wonder, are all these still here? Can I still whisper my greetings to them? The waters gaze at us from their lagoons. The tree in its red of earrings keeps itself silent. Never, my God, shall the sadness of your huge playthings be uprooted from me. Wow, that's beautiful.
I know. This is
It's really beautiful.
It's an incredible poem. It is shorter than the other poems we've looked at, but it is no less rich. And I want to go through.
So visual.
It's right. It's incredibly visual. I think a lot of us, if you want to react to the poem as a whole, I'd love to hear. We're already hearing a little bit, but I'd love to hear what strikes you already. Just in having not analyzed the poem quite yet, but just the images and some of the striking language. If anyone wants to respond to your initial reaction to this poem, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, we'll just dive right in. But I'd love to hear.
Can you pull it up a little more so we can see the end? Okay.
Yes.
It's discovering new things in an old vision.
Yes. Discovering new things in an old vision. I think this is such an important piece of this, is that it's an old vision to us, right? We see this vision, we'll go back to, we'll start at the beginning, because that's really how the poem starts. It starts with this striking line. It floors me when I read it, that even an old landscape has a moment of birth. So what is that line getting at? What is it trying to evoke in us? That even an old landscape, even an old landscape has a moment of birth.
There are old things don't have to be discarded, that we can find uses for them.
So that's beautiful. That's
uses. That
uses.
Actually, it's a continuation of life.
Yeah, right. That when we encounter things that are old, places that are old and ancient, and whatever it is we associate with things that are old, things that have been there forever, things that have been there a long time, we're coming in at a sort of a slice of the existence of that thing, right?
It's a rediscovery.
We're rediscovering things that have been discovered before and had their own moments of birth. We're not always ancient. We're not always old. We're not always the way things always were, right? That even the thing that feels the most secure in your life, even these mountains and valleys that we think of as just, this is what the world looks like. That has not always been the case. It had its moment of birth. What else? What else is striking about that first line, either in the Hebrew or the English?
Is it a literal translation?
It is a literal translation. I will say that the word gam, which is how the poem starts, it's sort of a connecting word, right? Gam, also. So it's even or also. And I'd love to hear how it strikes people that we have a poem that is starting with the word gam, as if it too is a continuation of something.
So there was a thought going on prior to the old landscape. It's transitional.
Yeah, it's transitional. Other thoughts from anyone on Zoom? how does this, I will say that this is a lot. Oh, Ruth, do you have anything?
I think she was.
Oh, no?
She
Oh, I
can't
think-
hear it. I'm trying to type her a message that she should look at
Uh-oh.
the top of the keys of the keyboard. Something is turned off,
On her
probably.
keyboard, not our keyboard, her keyboard.
Oh.
Right? You can hear. Everyone else can hear me, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Hopefully, I see the Ruth has gone away. And now hopefully she'll come back. I want her Hebrew.
Right.
So I can get you a microphone, but I know it's on their end.
I think it's her
Okay.
computer. Okay. But I will say that this first line is such a powerful first line of a poem because it animates every single thing that we think of as background noise in our life, right? Everything that's background noise in the world, an old landscape, the thing that
oh,
the
there's
thing
Ruth
that's
back.
behind. Sorry?
Ruth
she's-
is back.
Ruth is back. Yay.
Can you
Okay.
hear?
Yeah, now I can hear. I don't know what happened.
Yay.
Great. Ruth, we've been commenting just for you to make sure that I'm sure you noticed it because you've got the Hebrew up on us, but that this
Yeah.
is a poem that is beginning with the word gam. And
Also,
also gam lemara, which it's interesting with the meaning of this first line, which is that the things we're encountering as old weren't always that way. They too had their moment of birth. And so it's a continuation. It's a word that's a continuation and a bridge between something that came before and something that comes after. And it's a line that it tells us that nothing has always been here. Everything had its moment of birth. Every plant, every animal, every mountain has a story of how it came to be and has seen things and felt things that we haven't even tried to imagine.
Very visionary.
Very visionary. Now we get to this strange line here, right? The birdless heavens are impregnable.
It's a hard word. I couldn't.
And and strange. Okay, zarim umevutzarim, and mevutzarim kind of means fortified.
yeah,
And so it's being translated as impregnable.
How about impenetrable? That means
Impenetrable, right? But I think the word that the English translation is purposeful here because we're talking about why do we think this choice was made in the English?
Because it's the moment of birth. It corresponds to the moment of birth.
Exactly. And we're talking about there's sort of this split here in this conception of the world between the things that grow from the land and then the sky. The sky seems to be a place where things don't grow from there. Things don't stay there the way plants grow and take root and animals wander and gravity sort of keeps us down here. But the skies, you can't plant things there. I don't know, how are other people reading this line, understanding this line? Either in the Hebrew or the English, if we want to call the
Looks like
Birdless
it's a
skies.
parallelism.
what do you
The old
mean?
landscape is the birdless heavens, and the moment of birth refers to it being the opposite of impregnable and strange.
Yes, absolutely, right? So if
It's
we're
like
looking at,
in the Hebrew, the parallelism in the Bible.
absolutely, right? If you look at any biblical poetry, and by biblical poetry, I mean just mean biblical verse, you often, especially in Psalms, and we're going to be looking a lot at Psalms today, you see this structure of and these things are meant to line up with one another. So the old landscape, Sheila said, is meant to line up with the birdless heavens. And the moment of birth is meant to line up with the impregnable, impregnable and strange. Okay, so what else? What else do we make of, what is that line doing for us?
Birdless and again impregnable.
Yes.
In other words, the less and the im
Let's say that one more time.
Birdless and impregnable are like the same.
Yeah, right. There's nothing that's surviving up there, right? Everything that's living seems to be down here. And of course, if we're looking at a scientific understanding of the world, this is perhaps not it. We know that, you know, the atmosphere thing created. Oh, Ruth, yes.
The Mevutzarim is also, you cannot penetrate that
Yes.
area.
Yes. Right. It's fortified. It's impenetrable. It's you cannot and here, right, here it has to do with kind of creation, that's really not where it's happening, that the heavens, maybe creation is coming from the heavens, but it's not happening toward the heavens.
Could be there were no birds yet.
Ah,
There were no what?
no
No
birds.
birds yet.
Interesting. There were no birds yet. So, right. So we could here go back to our own creation story and think about, you know, when this was in that. Maybe there were no birds yet. Maybe this was before that kind of life had existed in the world. Okay. I want to move down to this next line, which is also so striking for other reasons, which is moonlit under your window lies your city, bathed in cricket weeping. Ir tula bivechi tzirtzarim. So we hear crickets at night, right? That's something that is a familiar experience for most of us, right? The sound of crickets at night. But this poem makes a leap. And it says that this is the sound of weeping. That the sound of the crickets chirping, there's emotion attached to it. So how does that transform your experience of that phenomena? To think of the sound of crickets chirping as the sound of crickets weeping.
I think of crickets chirping as a natural process and very soothing and comforting. Crickets weeping meaning something wrong is happening around us.
Yeah.
You know, there's an imbalance if they're weeping. It's a disconcerting sound.
Right. So the sound of crickets is a comforting sound for many of us. It's a sound of nature being as nature is meant to be. And if we think of it as weeping, something's off in nature. Something is not balanced. Ruth?
Moonlit
I'm,
and bathed.
I'm looking at Hasahur, Balayla Hasahur, and I see Sohar, which is jail.
Yeah.
You are like jailed in your room.
Lila Hasahur, Mohan. Ooh.
Against your window that is standing, well, our omitted is for the next line.
Balayla Hasahur, it's like you are like in jail. I don't know.
It's not moving. In other words, the moonlight is not moving. It's jailed.
It's a really interesting way to think of evening. And right, so but look, let's think about it. If we think of night as being jailed, if nighttime is jailed, right? There are a lot of things that are happening in this poem where we're attributing human experiences to nature in order to better understand what's happening in the world. So imagine, so we're getting a few things here that seem off, right? The night being jailed, the crickets are crying, they're weeping. Something is off. Something is, and we get to the last line of the poem, which I don't know if you remember that, Never, my God, shall the sadness of your huge playthings be uprooted from me. Right? Don't remember remember that's coming for us, that last line. So there is an emotion that nature has here. There is a sadness, there is a pain that nature is experiencing. And so when we call nighttime jailed, when we call crickets weeping, we're sensing that pain, or we're making ourselves sense that pain. Sheila?
Yeah, moonlit, bathed. We very often talk about being bathed in the moonlight.
It's true. It's a very poetic terminology. And
But that by Lila Hassahur, that really is just like ignored in the translation.
it is ignored in the translation, or that's what's chosen as a translation for a particular.
Unless it would, what he's saying by first of all, wait a minute, by Lila Hassahur is what is being translated actually as moonlit.
It is. You're right. That is what's being
It is,
translated.
but by Lila Hassahur is something that's not moving. It's not moonlit. In other words, it would sound more like it's something dark, not moonlit. The opposite of moonlit.
I mean, so it's interesting because the translation, if you look up a Hebrew translation, which Ruth can do for us and often does do for us, the translation is moonlit. That is a literary translation of sahur. But I think we can look into the root of it and see something different there. Why does moonlit, why does that word for moonlit, which is an accurate translation, but it contains that same root. And we never want to forget that the Hebrew contains multitudes in terms of its meaning. So a moonlit night could also be a jailed night, could also be a stagnant night.
Stagnant is a good word.
Yeah.
It's not moving. It's just, it's sitting there.
It's sitting there. It's waiting.
Against the cricket weeping, which is noise.
Right. There's a contrast there. There's certainly a contrast. And maybe it's, why don't we hear the cricket weeping? If it's so still, if night is such a time when we're quiet, us humans are quiet and we're not moving about the world the way we always do. And maybe the sounds of nature can become a little more familiar to us. Why don't we hear the cricket weeping? Why don't we just hear the crickets?
Ruth, you looked something up.
I take back. I only saw the letters of Sohar, but the dictionary calls Sahur moonlit. So I take back what I said.
No, but Ruth, I think it's important because we want to look at the roots of the words and the Hebrew contains many meanings, and we should be aware of that in poetry. Nothing is being used, without that knowledge. So it's always enhancing our understanding of the poem.
So you were talking about being imprisoned.
Yeah.
The city lies under your window. Are you in a tower? Are you
Right
above it?
So, right, so that's another interesting thing that's happening here. There's a positionality that's being indicated with this line, moonlit under your window, which seems like you're inside. Okay, right? Are we inside in this line?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we're inside. We're talking about the outside world. We're talking about the reality, the experience, the old landscapes, the birdless heavens, and the cricket weeping, and we're inside. And I think that's really important to understanding our role within this all, what we are able to hear and not hear and pay attention to, and how removed we are sometimes from the natural world, because we build ourselves these homes that are wonderful and keep us safe in many ways, but also keep the sounds, the cries of the natural world from us. So
do the
Yes, go
next
ahead.
paragraph, because the next paragraph, actually, it's like a continuation. Why it's a second paragraph? You know, they're separated, I don't quite get. But
Yeah,
it's continuing that you have the crickets weeping, but there's more than the crickets weeping under your window.
yes.
It's the wanderer. Somebody is wandering there and asking, are these things still here? In other words, it's dark, but are they still here? Can I still talk, react to them?
So it's so interesting that your eye goes right to the wanderer. It goes right to, and that's it's where we see ourselves in this poem, right? We are the wanderers. We are the people behind the windows. That's where we come in. And it's always easiest to inhabit, the person in a poem. And so the wanderer, right? The wanderer is there, but the wanderer is the object, not the subject, right?
Yeah, you're the,
You're right,
Subject is,
yeah.
you're still the subject.
who's the subject?
You are, we are.
Well, we are, sure. It's observational. Oh, sure. We are behind it all watching this. But this is interesting. The path is looking at the wanderer. It's not the wanderer looking at the path. It's not the wanderer looking around and seeing everything. We're seeing that the path is still looking at the wanderer.
It's the path that's been moonlit.
Yeah, if it wasn't for
Yes.
the moon, we would see nothing, basically.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true
And
that
that
the moon,
moon is resting on a spear of cypress. The spear refers back to impregnable.
right? So we can certainly make that move. So a spear of cypress, and of course that, like, if we're thinking about this image, and this is a poetic view of the world, understanding of the world, where you're looking through the trees and you see an arm of a tree, the spear of the cypress tree, and the moon looks like it's resting on that branch, when of course we know the moon is far, far away and isn't actually resting on that branch, but to be able to visualize it like that. Tybal?
I'm sorry, I don't remember, but there's a custom to plant two different kinds of trees when a baby's born. Is the cypress for a boy or for a girl, or should I try to look that up fast?
That's a great question. If you would look it up, that would be great.
I'll see if I can find it, and then I'll put my hand up again.
Okay, wonderful.
Oh, let me just say, it's a Jewish tradition. It's not like a general tradition.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's important to see that here, right? The choice of a cypress is intentional for lots of reasons. But
Oh,
that's that.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
If this is correct, the first thing that came up, I'll look on Safaria, but when I look fast, this doesn't sound right to me, but this says cedar for a girl and pine for a boy. And I don't think that pine is right historically, because I
Right.
don't think that there were pines in Israel, but I'll look on Safari.
I
Oh
think
no,
Wendy's-
okay, I found something better.
Okay.
Cedar for a boy and cypress for a girl. Hold
I
on,
like
I'll see if I can find it in Safari.
I just found something. It says a cedar would be planted for a boy and a cypress for a girl.
Great. Okay. Cypress for a girl. So that's we're
And a moon is considered a girl.
so right. So
She's a
certainly
goddess.
we have these gendered items, objects, and here we're, especially when we're personifying nature, it's helpful to bring that out. But here, I'm really struck by the language of a path looking at the wanderer, right? What I want to know what you all make of that. The path looking at the wanderer. How often do you think of a path looking at anything? But the paths that we are treading, they have something to do with us. They have something to say about us. They have something to feel about us.
Does the Hebrew come out to looks?
Yes. Sofa.
But it might be expecting someone to come
Yeah.
up with.
So if it's
We are
looking,
waiting for the Mashiach, maybe. I don't know.
so you know what, and that's because that was my first thought. A couple weeks ago, we didn't quite get to the text, but I brought it for you. Where it was a text that said, "Oh, how lovely the footsteps of the Mashiach are on this mountain," right? Like how soft and wonderful, like it feels to have the harbinger of peace and you know those sort of good times and ultimate, you know, happiness and this sort of utopian society. How happy the earth is to be carrying that person, you know? And so that's what I thought of when I thought of this,
That would fit.
right? What does it feel like to have different people with different stories walking on you as a path? And how does it, I mean, I think of whenever I go out into nature and walk, you know, in the metro parks or, you know, there are times when I don't even think about where I'm walking. I'm just, you know, I'm either looking around at the trees or thinking about something and it's about something that's happened that day. And to think there are these walking meditations that I've been taught to do where you take off your shoes and just with your bare feet, walk very, very slowly on a path on the ground, watching, like feeling what the earth feels like under your feet, how it gives or how it holds. And when you're paying attention to every little thing you're stepping on, what critters you might be stepping on, how you might be, you know, affecting an entire ecosystem just by walking on it, right? We so rarely think about the world underneath our feet. And I think that's what this paragraph is doing for me.
So you have beneath the feet and then you have up in the sky because
Yes,
you've got both ends of it.
That's true, right? You have the you know what's happening below you, and also the moon and these great playthings of God, right? These things, and you ask and wonder, are all of these still here? Can I still whisper my greetings to them? What does that question tell you? Are all of these still here?
Again, the old landscape.
The old landscape, maybe you forget. Maybe when something is an old landscape,
You just take it for
you
granted.
just take it for granted, exactly, right? And then all of a sudden, something happens and you remember, oh, that's still there.
Does it work? Like there's the moon, in other words, the sky. He's talking about trees. And then in the last stanza, he's talking about the waters
Yes.
and the lagoons. And they're all huge playthings.
Yes.
In
Right,
other
so
words,
the
it's going from the top to the middle to the bottom,
yes.
and the path is it's a the steps to heaven.
Right. So there's more positionality happening here, right? There's the low, there are the paths, there are the things that we tread on, there's the moon that's sort of in the heavens, and there are these waters, which we can talk about water in Judaism forever, you know, what water represents and how water brings us back to that moment of creation when, you know, we think about what was there before everything was there. What was there when nothing was there? Water. Right? If you look at Bereshit, you look at Genesis, the first chapter, our creation story, we like to think that something was made out of nothing, but that's not actually what our Torah says. It says that there was water there. There were these primordial waters. And so here we have waters gazing at us from their lagoons. And okay, this is something very interesting. The tree in its red of earrings. Okay, so this is a little bit complicated, this phrase, because and when I looked at the Hebrew, Odem agilim, right? It's the word agilim that's being translated as earrings.
Are we talking now about the fall and the leaves turning red and they're
So-
dripping down?
It does have to do with dripping down. I will tell you that. There
It
is
was-
a,
It does or
It does.
doesn't?
it, to some extent, you're absolutely right that
Okay,
it
if
has
it's
to
dripping
do,
down, it's the waters drip down.
it's, interesting. Interesting. It's, so you're right, that it has to do with a natural phenomenon that looks, it can look like adornment for trees. There's this word that agilim in the Hebrew can mean both earrings, and it's this word that I just discovered called catkins.
Visit?
Catkin, Catkin. It's a
So
word.
catkin
that-
is a weed.
Yes,
It's the one, it's, oh God,
That-
we have them, in the,
Just thinking like cat's tails that go up.
he is.
Yeah.
So here,
it's round. It's brown at the
Oh.
top. They're all over on this, on the side.
see
That's a
this?
cat's tail. Oh, but that I've seen, that weird
And
thing
see
that.
this. Can you see it on
Oh,
the
no,
screen?
that's different, yeah.
But it's this natural earring, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
cool.
we're
Okay.
talking about.
'Cause I was picturing fruit,
Yes,
but yeah, that's cool.
it's this sort of flowering, hanging, naturally occurring earring on this tree. So we're anthropomorphizing this tree. We're able to look at this tree as something that has a body, that has adornments, that
But
you know,
it's
keeps-
red. It's
they're so
interesting.
right. The red isn't interested, what is that? So the color is interesting here, the red.
Because the catkin are not red there.
No, I think
Yeah.
it probably
They're
could
yellow,
be.
yellowish.
That's golden.
Sure, I think that example was golden. I don't know if there can be red. I'm sure the color choice here is particular for some
Oh,
reason. I think
yes.
red
Oh.
invokes so much. What is red invoking for you?
Death,
Blood.
life, both.
Blood,
Blood.
Blood.
yes, blood. Absolutely. The odem, that the life, blood, death, life, blood, right? I think we're getting at the basic idea for all of this is that everything here is alive. The tree is alive, the path is alive, the moon is alive. And it's this concept of animism. This is sort of the anthropological terminology for it, is that it's animism. These things in the world, in the natural world, are animated with life, with souls of some kind.
But they're playthings.
Well, they're played.
In other words, it's a positive thing. It's
Yes.
something positive. It's something we should engage with.
Yes.
But-
Yes, go ahead, Ruth.
No, can you explain? I don't understand the last verse. Tuga ta'atzuecha hagdolim. Tuga is sadness.
Yes. Yes. So that's true, right? That's also running all throughout this. There is a sadness in nature here. There's the cricket weeping. The crickets are weeping here. The
Skies are birdless.
skies are birdless. The tree is keeping its silence with this sort of red that is invoking death and blood and life all in one. You know,
And the waters are gazing at us. They're not moving.
yes, they're
Has
right.
it anything to do with the kidon? Kidon habrosh. You know what kidon is?
This spear of cypress, the branch.
The cypress looks like a spear, but kidon is something that you use in war. You attach it to your rifle, a bayonet, or
Yes,
something like that. So it has to do something with war here.
and I think you're right. I think there's a language.
When was it
There's
written?
language
When was the
of that.
poem written?
It's a great
Oh.
question. It's a great question. I don't actually know what year this poem was written. He lived between, well, let's see, when was he writing his poetry? Between 1930 and 1970, he was writing his poetry. There was certainly a lot of war to go around,
Yeah.
and he was living in Israel.
Mhm.
We lived on the same street, if you want to know.
Really?
Oh,
They
what?
don't know though.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
a black
Did you know
author.
he was a poet?
Yes,
Ruth?
yes.
Oh my God. Oh, cool.
Wow. Wow. There's an interesting thing to think about here. I love that personal connection.
Yeah.
If we're thinking about war, and there is, if your experience of the world is colored by war, of course, that will come out in your poetry. And maybe we're talking about what nature thinks when it sees people at war, right? Like what happens to the land
Yeah.
when there's violence on top
Mhm.
of it, around it, when the path that's being trod is being trod, with violence, when there's pain being inflicted, and there's a sadness that the earth is feeling. But this is it, and that's something kind of beautiful to remember, that this last line here, right? It is very striking that your huge playthings, that the sadness, sometimes our own sadness can consume us, and we experience a lot of trauma in this
Yeah.
world. Of
Yeah.
course, it's a different kind of grief that is experienced by the earth, but it's one we never question. We never think about the kind of grief experienced by non-humans. We learn more and more. I mean, we can. Rabbi Jacobs can tell you, because they're going to be reading this book, the Secret Life of Trees, right? So much has been discovered about the way trees communicate with one another, help fellow trees who are suffering or needing nutrients, how trees, communicate and feel in ways we never thought possible, because we never looked into it. There's all of this emerging science about this hidden life that's quiet to us. It's quiet to us. And we've learned this about animals too. The same author wrote a book about the inner life of animals and the kind of grief experienced by animals, the kind of pain. It doesn't look exactly like ours, but it's certainly there. And this poem is bringing it out. And I want to think with you before we. I don't really want to end quite here on this poem, because there's so many texts to look at before we come back to the poem and officially conclude it. But as we consider the world of this poem, which is one where nature weeps, where nature watches us and rests on branches, where, the great sadness of God's playthings is something to take account of, I want to ask us, even though you know the answer because you know what I'm going to bring, is this foreign to the Jewish tradition? This way of looking at nature?
No, nature is part of our life. We are concerned with trees. We don't take the first fruits.
Yes.
You can't cut down the trees of your enemies
In wartime. Yeah.
in wartime. So we are very much aware of the earth and what we can do with it. We respect it.
Absolutely. Right. Or at least we're meant to. That's part of our tradition, is that we're
That's the climate issue.
right. But
So
you're
when
right.
when you think of it in Israel, they are very concerned. I mean, right away, they bothered to find out how to plow the land. I mean, the Arabs were there. They didn't do much for irrigation or anything like that. They just lived with what was there, and we tried to develop it. We tried to find the water, use the water.
Yeah. And in Israel too, and certainly in ancient
In
Israel,
Israel, exactly, yeah.
sure, but in Israel and in ancient Israel, I mean, we have in modern Israel, it's an interesting way that they apply this, but the concept of Shemitah, right? The
Yeah.
Shemitah year, the year of release, we let the land rest. We have this idea that the land is something that needs rest, right? Like it's a radical idea. Firstly, the concept that we deserve a day of rest every week is something Judaism brought to the world. And then this idea that the land itself, we work it, it suffers, it's worked hard, it deserves its break.
You know, it just occurred to me when you say the word Shemitah. We do Shemitah, but Yosef actually did it right away. That was why he was successful.
Right. So,
Because
right,
he
we're getting
he taught them to let the fields rest,
in times of
that-
famine.
which is, you know, interesting. I mean, I'm surprised. I've never heard it from an Orthodox person saying, you see, he knew the Bible before it was written down, and he
Yes.
knew about Shemitah. I've
Yes.
never heard that being, you know, said
Maybe
as
he
a sermon,
influenced
but
it.
okay.
It's very,
Rabbi
and that's
Jacobs,
very
you have a
interesting.
new sermon.
Yes, he did.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill, I see your hand.
Wouldn't some of it, and I'll give you some nature here.
Thanks.
Wouldn't some of it also even go back to the language and the narrative in in Gan Eden, where
Yeah.
Trees.
where Adam named things, which is a way of making them more individual as different things. And doesn't the Hebrew imply to not just to use it or eat it, but to be guardian?
Yes, absolutely. We're meant to tend and till, work and guard, shomer, the land. We're meant to be guardians of the land. And you're right, from Genesis, from our own creation story, right? You're right. We give names. We, you know, everything is sort of created in its time. It's given its day, and no, absolutely, there is certainly a respect for nature and a partnership that we're meant to have that's baked into that our creation story. Okay, tell me one other place in our holy text where nature comes alive in a different way. I'll give you a hint.
How about the crossing of the Red Sea?
The crossing. Okay, so let's talk
Water.
about that. The crossing of the Red Sea, the water, which it's sort of acting according to God's will, but against its own nature.
The winds.
Yeah, to create dry land for us to walk across on. It is part of our salvation, and it's also part of the destruction of the Egyptians. There's actually an incredible midrash which I didn't bring. It was one of the ones that I almost brought, which talked about how the Egyptians, right, we went through the split seas, and the Egyptians were killed by the seas. And in Az Yashir, I think it says that the earth will swallow up. The earth is going to swallow up the Egyptians. And there's a midrash on that, where the earth says, why do I have to be the one to bury the Egyptians? The seas are the ones that killed them. Why do I have to be the one to bury them? And God says, don't worry, at some future time, oh, that's great. At some future time, the earth will be the one to kill, and the seas will bury, and the seas will bury. So we sort of take, and that had to do with Sisera. So that's a later battle that happens, where it seems like the seas are the burial place, and the earth is the place of death. And so it's this, again, this sort of anthropomorphizing of the earth and the seas as, you know, places that have to hold the violence and you know, of human experience. I want to read, sorry?
You have the sea also becomes filled with blood. A lot of the plagues
Right.
deal with the sea.
All of the plagues are this distortion of nature working differently. But I want to shift, because the Psalms are poetry, much like the poem we just read, in really powerful ways. It's not just that we are meant to have partnership with nature. The Psalms give personality and feeling to nature itself. It makes nature the subject in the story. And so I want to read just a couple, two excerpts from different Psalms. There are many, many, many Psalms that do this. But I'd love if we could read just a few of these. You'll recognize them. They are ones we sing every week or every Hallow, or this one. I've given you the first line, and then it's and then the 11th verse of it. But it's you might know the one of many melodies to go to this. Will anyone read this for us? Ron?
All right, I'll read it. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Let the heavens rejoice and the earth exult. Let the sea and all within it thunder. The fields and everything in them exalt. Then shall all the trees of the forest shout for joy at the presence of the Lord. For God is coming. For God is coming to rule the earth. God will rule the earth justly and its peoples in faithfulness.
Okay. So this is one example, and you could see even here, right? That there is this request: sing to the Lord a new song. Shiru Adonai shir chadash. Shiru Adonai kol haaretz. The whole land has to sing God's praises. The whole earth, all of existence. And so we always, people should sing. But here the heavens rejoice, the earth exalts, the sea is going to thunder, and everything in it will thunder, will make this great noise. The fields will exult. The trees of the forest shall shout for joy. Shout for joy. It's just to imagine a tree doing that. This is what our text does. It animates nature, often in the Psalms, for God's praise. That is often the direction that this goes, that it's joy. The nature is imbued with a sense of joy and ecstasy, and that we're all praising God together. And it's this sort of united kind of praise, this oneness of everything. And then I want to read just this other psalm, which you'll recognize from Hallel, another classic one, a great song. And often we don't read the words, or we don't read the words to understand them. Will someone read this for us in English? Rabbi Jacobs?
Sure. When Israel went forth from Egypt, the house of Jacob from a people of strange speech, Judah became God's holy one, Israel God's dominion. The sea saw them and fled. Jordan ran backward. Mountains skipped like rams, hills like sheep. What alarmed you, O sea, that you fled? Jordan, that you ran backward. Mountains, that you skipped like rams, hills like sheep. Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool of water, the flinty rock into a fountain.
Okay. So this is our Beit Israel, and again, we're talking about Exodus. We do come back to nature time and time again with the Exodus story. But this is a reaction to our being afraid, to the miracles that God performs. This is nature's reaction to that, which is what? What is it a reaction of?
Desert?
Say that again. Of desert.
The desert. In other words, it's a contrast to the.
Yeah.
Fear.
So, right. So you have these different elements: the desert, you have the sea, you have the mountains.
And they're all happy. They're all happy.
But that is the question: are they? Tybal.
I'm not on the emotion. I'm on the idea that, on Shabbos, we're supposed to do things differently than we do the other days of the week.
Yeah.
Whether it's stress, a whole bunch of things that will have to deal with separation. So in a way, this is separation because things are not the way they usually are.
And in that way, it's holy. It's holy. It's sort of like when we looked at those end of days images a couple of weeks ago, where lion lay down with lamb, and all of these unnatural things happened in the name of peace. That's what peace looked like. All of these these things that aren't meant to go together, don't go together naturally, or fight against one another, are natural enemies. And we're seeing a similar thing here, right? We're seeing, the things that are normally still in our world are not.
But they all tremble.
All tremble. There is fear. There is fear. There is a fear.
Yes, there is fear.
Yeah. That's for many of the Psalms, you have this sort of animation of nature in the name of joy and praise. And here in this Psalm, it's the natures being so in awe of God and of us as a people being freed from slavery, that they're retreating and skipping and making way for us in this sort of fearful, odd way. Tybal?
You did it already, but I want to make it explicit because there's that Hebrew word, isn't it, yirah, which sometimes is translated as fear and sometimes at awe, and you mixed it up, but that's the point, that maybe it's not fear, maybe it's awe.
Yes.
But
yes.
also, they also use the word, that the mountains skip like rams, hills like sheep. I don't know.
And look at that word.
If someone is skipping, it's a positive thing. I think of kids who skip, otherwise they run.
Yes.
It's joyful.
It is. And look, the Hebrew is what? Look at this.
Tirkadu, they dance.
They dance. Dancing is, you're right, dancing is generally a
Positive thing.
joyful thing. And so maybe it's an unsettling of nature, and and you get some awe and you get some joy.
Maybe it's also like when you're a wedding. In other words, it's happy, but there's a certain amount of trembling, and today they most likely have known each other before they got married, but you don't know what to expect.
Right. It's this.
You're happy, you're skipping, you're dancing, but you're trembling.
This is a
using
moment.
The word awe.
You're right, and you're right that this is a moment of great possibility and unknown for the people of Israel. Right. This is they've just been redeemed from slavery. They haven't yet become a nation. They're still an enslaved people. That's still their mindset. They still have to become a nation. They have to become the Israelite people. And maybe it's this liminal moment, this moment of transition with this infinite possibility. And it's sort of like, it's like a new couple coming together. It's the people and God. We often talk about the people and God coming together in this sort of marital kind of way. Like, what is this union going to look like? Right? Okay, we have 2 minutes left. I want to show you, just based on another psalm, which again has to do with fear or awe, which is from the heavens, God made judgment heard, the earth feared and was quiet. And I just want to briefly touch on this midrash, which is an incredible midrash that looks at the fact that the earth was both fearful and quiet. Why did it have to say both of those things? Why fearful and quiet? Why not just quiet? Why not just fearful? What is the meaning of both of those words? And this is the story that it tells. That the earth said, the first person, Adam Harishon, Adam, was only commanded a single commandment, not to eat from the tree, right? And he transgressed it. And it was because of him that the earth, was cursed. Right? That was Adam's curse. The land shall be cursed because of you. You shall toil to get any, fruit from it, any food from it. It's going to be difficult. And here with the people of Israel, accepting Torah, right? After they've been freed, after, with this new union with God, God is commanding 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments. How much the more so will I be cursed? They couldn't keep one commandment. Now you're commanding them all of these commandments. I'm going to be so cursed. I'm going to be like this. The earth is afraid at what God's relationship with us is going to do to her. And the God replies here and consoles the earth, saying, earth, 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 right? Eretz, eretz, eretz. Listen to the word of God. You heard that I said, you heard the curse when I said the earth is cursed because of you. By pain you will eat. But you didn't listen. You know, in the Parshat Noach, when God said, I will not continue to curse the land again because of humanity. So there's a consoling of earth, but it's this beautiful midrash where the earth is given such character, such feeling, and that we have this relationship with the earth, with God. God has a relationship with us and an independent relationship with the earth. And what is all of our relationship together? How are we meant to interact with this world that is very much alive, even if it's not the way that we understand being alive, right? It's a different kind of alive. And so all of these texts, all of our texts are trying to shift that mindset, shift our perspective. They're trying to function as what at the beginning I called it a photo negative, right? They're trying to bring to light all of those things which are normally background noise and to give them life. And I want to end, or I know we're at time, but this is a poet who does animate nature in every single one of her poems. She's a classic poet. A lot of modern poetry lovers love her. And this is a poem she wrote called Sleeping in the Forest. And I just want to end with this. I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichens and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the riverbed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars. But my thoughts, and they floated light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees. All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell, as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning, I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. Thanks you, everybody. I hope you all are differently aware. I hope you're all differently aware of the natural world this week as fall comes to an end. You know, I think the natural background, you know, the old landscapes that we're used to are changing every minute. That's the beauty of Cleveland. So
It is.
Yeah, I know it.
It is that the change of seasons is what
I love.
nice.
Yeah. So I'm thrilled to be learning with you, and I will see you
Thank you.
next week.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that last
Bye.
poem.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Rabbi Alex,
Yes.
a curious person. So originally this was going to be 6, right? And now it's 5.
Yes. Yes.
So are you smushing all the poems that you wanted to do in fewer sessions, or you figure you'll teach whatever was going to be that 6th session eventually?
I think I think we want to end before Thanksgiving, and then there will be a new spotlight session with a new teacher after that. So we're still going to have to be within our time. But I will try to get to as much as I'd wanted to get to with you all. If not in this series, then another time. All right, everyone.